Alright, so I couldn't sleep last night. I was laying there thinking, and I'd seen a video yesterday that talked about Dwarven tropes and different ways you can structure your dwarves, basically. It got me thinking about some ideas, and so while I couldn't sleep last night, I started thinking about that. Maybe that's why I couldn't sleep. And I had this idea in my head of a continent for a homebrew setting that kind of uses a couple of his ideas with my own little spin on it and stuff like that. So the idea behind this continent is it's going to be in the southern hemisphere, and some of the civilizations take after certain things. So I'm going to show you the map and I'll explain as I go on. Okay? So let's do this. Alright. Let's see. Alright, this is the overall map. If you look at it, you can see the shading that I did around it. That's so you can see the water borders. That's a lake, stuff like that. All those black dots are the cities, and stuff like that. So, alright, and I'll start at the top and I'll work my way down. So, starting up here, this is what I call the human territory. Obviously, my map stops here, but it goes up into another continent. Much like, South America going to Mexico and, things like that. So, I started with the human territory, and the human territory is in between the North Savage Mountains and another mountain that I haven't defined yet. And the city is going to be called Elda. And Elda is going to be named after, I'm not quite sure, but I think it's going to basically mean elder. And it's going to be one of the oldest human cities in the world. At least that's what I'm planning right now. And it's basically in between where these two mountains meet, but where there's an opening. So they kind of protect anything ever getting up there. Now this is supposed to be a forest. This whole area is like a great rainforest. Okay, so I call it the Ancient Forest, and the main city in the middle is called City of Ancients. And it's where the oldest elves in the world live, and that for sure will stay that way. That'll still be the oldest one. It's going to be the oldest rainforest with the oldest elves in the world. I have a spot called Pirates Cove. And so that's where, a bunch of pirates have settled and started chopping away at the woods and making their place. Yeah, so, anyways, that's the oldest spot where elves pretty much keep to themselves. It's 99.9% elves. The Elda is going to be a mix of races, but it's mainly humans. And humans run the city. They're the nobles there. This is my Eastern Dwarven territory, and these lines in between these dots are their Great Wall. So think of like the Great Wall of China. All of these dwarves right here are surface dwellers, and think of like an Asian culture. They're going to have samurai style. There's going to be gunpowder, very rare, but there's going to be gunpowder in this area. The reason for the wall between North Post and East Post is so that they can protect themselves from elves. There is an opening over here, and then even further over here is Pirates Bay. The only reason I'm leaving an opening here is so that they could, in theory, if they needed to, go and hunt in the forest, just barely over there. And I think that's going to be an area that's very dangerous. Okay. Not to say that there aren't dangerous parts in this territory, but that's more dangerous. I'm planning on making some kind of a big city somewhere in here. I'm not sure, as like their capital, but I haven't thought of that yet. Down here in one of the peninsulas, it's called Southport, and that's their southernmost port city. South Post over here technically is a little bit further south, but but it's a post. It's basically the end of the wall, and they could technically go around the wall if they needed to. The west post is their furthest post west, and north post is their furthest post north, which that's a pretty safe spot actually. The west, south, and east post are the most dangerous posts. So, and then I'm going to have a few lakes. They got a big lake right here, a little lake there, and a little lake there. So, and right now I just call it the Eastern Dwarven Territory. So that's that. Then, so if these dwarves are like the ancient style, they actually don't have beards. Think of them, like I said, of more of a like a samurai culture, very noble. Very spiritual, afraid of the unknown, afraid of spirits, ghosts, things like that. So then, jump over here, and south of the North Savage Mountains, this mountain runs all along here, down to there. It has a cut through over here, and then it comes down this way. And these are the South Savage Mountains. This is a river connecting the Lake of the Mountains to the mountains. So the mountains, it runs down and into the Lake of Mountains, of the mountains. Right now I just call this the Dwarven Territory, Western Dwarven Territory. And right now they have a city called Hispin. Haven't done much more with that. The idea behind their lakes is that you can't actually drink from them. And this is a very desert, barren area. So a lot of the dwarves over here are more like savage nomads, and the lands through here are kind of like the Middle East. So think of that kind of a climate and vegetation here, which really there's not a lot. So that's kind of how that is. And they're warring with the Eastern Dwarves. So, and all of them are surface-dwelling dwarves. Okay? Then, down south is called Orcs Arrow. And what Orcs Arrow is referring to is this peninsula. And this is called Lake of the Dead, which is where orcs drop their dead bodies, whether they're orcs or if it's human slaves, dwarven slaves, whatever. It's called Lake of the Dead because they drop all the bodies in there. Obviously they're not going to cart slaves and stuff back from up here, but if any slaves die in any surrounding area right here, they're going to drop them in there. Orcs in this area are very religious. Their deities that they worship tell them to dump the bodies in the Lake of the Dead. And there's a prophecy that goes along with it that a great necromancer is going to come one day and raise all of the orcs, all of the bodies out of there to create a great army that will then help them defeat this whole continent. The cities here are pretty plain and simple. You have Dragon's Blade, which is in this blade-looking part of the peninsula. And it's also called that because there is a great... all of these are named after a magical item. So, and there are dragons down here. So, the Dragon's Blade is actually a sword that can defeat dragons, gives a bonus to defeat dragons. And so the whole city's named after it. Dragon's Snout, again, it's a magical item. Haven't decided what it's gonna do, but it's just the snout of a dragon that this city is built around. And they're all orc cities, so there's a lot of turmoil, a lot of chaos. Dragon's Tooth. And there's actually more than one, but this city is named after the Dragon's Tooth. And over here is Dragon's Foot. Again, magical item is what that's named after. So that is my orc area, and orcs just named their cities pretty simple down here. But they're very religious. They do worship, items. They worship deities. worship the dead. So down here it's really nasty. So, and they're obviously warring with the Eastern Dwarves and the Western Dwarves. And if they could, they would also go all the way up to Elda, which they could get between there and get up there. But yeah, so big giant war grounds in here that seem to happen. And the idea is that before all of this, the Dwarves and Orcs all lived in these mountains. And they collapsed, separating the surface-dwelling Dwarves and Orcs, forcing the Dwarves that were above it to be surface-dwelling at the time, and forcing the Orcs that were on top, that were originally slaves, into their own area. So they escaped to the south to get away from Dwarves. But yeah, and there still are underground Dwarves. But the underground Dwarves they try not to socialize with anything on the surface. They try to keep to themselves. And there are dragons through those mountains, among other savage beasts and creatures. And there are dragons in the ancient forest. So, yeah, this video is getting a little long. I only have a little more to go, so that's alright. Over here there are 4 islands. I have not named all of them. I've only named one, and I call it the Isle of Undead. Okay, nobody goes there if they know about it or know that that's where they're at. This city is called Kiki, and I'm thinking that think of like Pacific Islanders, like Samoans, Hawaiians, things like that. I'm thinking of a bunch of dwarves came from over here before these dwarves became warring factions. When they were all one, some dwarves traveled and ended up here. And they're more laid back. They're all warriors, but they're more laid back culture. So, and I still don't know what to do with these 2 islands. I might just make them also Pacific Islander dwarves. I thought about putting some orcs on one, but I'm not sure what I'm going to do with those 2 islands yet. So yeah, that's part of my homebrew setting that I've started. I don't know what to call this continent yet. But yeah, let me know what you think. I know this was a long video. But yeah, I was kind of excited about it. I thought it was interesting, and maybe the map's not, geographically correct. But yeah, I don't know. I think it's kind of cool. I think it would be fun to play in. There's a lot of seeds just by looking at this area. A lot of things you could do just on this continent alone. And I just think it would be kind of interesting. So let me know what you think. I'm very curious about your thoughts. Thanks. Bye.